Hello and welcome to Firearm Freedom. This is going to be another versus video, and in today's versus video we are comparing pump versus semi-automatic shotguns. I've now been posting links over on the community tab where you can see some pretty good deals. All that stuff is affiliate marketing, so anything you purchase over there seriously does help me out, and I do appreciate it. Whenever I do these versus videos, it's kind of interesting because I immediately assume that I'm just going to know my stance on the topic, but a lot of the times, even though I am the one making the video, I end up being surprised at the end result when I'm actually questioning directly what I think about a particular topic or one item versus another. When I first started this review process between these two, and really just thinking about all semi-automatic versus pump shotguns, I almost automatically assumed that I was going to prefer semi-automatics over pump actions. Just without question, I'm like, okay, semi-auto is going to be the win, but let's do, the comparison and we'll see. And you guys might be surprised that maybe I don't ultimately favor that way. But I have a multitude of different shotgun videos out there, semi-automatic versus pump shotgun. However, for this B-roll, I am primarily comparing the Benelli M1 Super 90 versus this Remington 870 Retrograde. This is by no means saying that this is the best semi-automatic or that this is the best pump action. In order to make this decision, I am comparing all of my shotguns. These are just so happen to be the two that came to the range with me this day for this video. But again, it has nothing to do with the overall opinion of semi-automatic versus pump. Let's talk about some pros and cons with pump action to start off. This is a very reliable system if it is ran correctly. Now, what do I mean by ran correctly? Well, kind of a double edge to that sword is that if you are shooting the gun under stress, what can happen a lot is you can bring it back not all the way and try to get it forward again and cause some feeding issues, and that's called short stroking the shotgun. So there is a pro to its reliability of its action, but there's also a con at the same time. Both of these designs require a lot of training. Something else about the pump shotgun is similar to a bolt-action rifle. You do not have any sort of an action to soak up that recoil. So most of the time, not always, but most of the time, a pump action shotgun with defensive loads will have slightly more felt recoil than a semi-automatic shotgun. Now, that depends heavily on the weight of the shotgun as well. This 870 has a steel receiver, and it is a pretty hefty pump action shotgun, and the recoil is actually pretty pleasant. Of course, the recoil pad in the rear portion of the shotgun also helps out. One of my favorite things about a pump action shotgun is the variety of loads. So a lot of time with semi-automatics, especially a good defensive or combat semi-automatic shotgun, they can be a little bit finicky on lighter ammunition, or for whatever reason, even though I wouldn't recommend it, if you wanted to run like less than lethal or just some really, really light, low recoil birdshot to learn and train with the shotgun, that can sometimes be an issue with a lot of semi-automatics. With a pump action, that is not the case. Anything that you want to put through here, it's going to cycle for the most part just fine. The only things that will sometimes have issues are the mini shells, so they're about half this size, and that is not really an issue of semi versus pump. This is just a problem with how tiny they are, and the actions just really aren't designed for them. So what I've found sometimes happens is they'll go to cycle and spin around in the action and cause some reliability problems. When we look at semi-automatics, again, I gotta mention the recoil aspect because a lot of them, because of this action, when the gun fires, the recoil kicks the action back, and instead of a lot of that felt recoil going into your shoulder, it will be soaked up a little bit by the action. Now, I brought this Benelli out because it is a very lightweight shotgun. And you know, I gotta say, the recoil on this is, for semi-automatic, pretty punishing. So this is a prime example of the action is going to take up a little bit, but because the shotgun is so lightweight, it doesn't really matter, and the recoil is still pretty high. And that has been the kind of the opinion of whoever has shot this shotgun. Whereas versus my 1187 being a semi-automatic and a very heavy, stout semi-automatic shotgun, it does a really good job with recoil, and that thing is a joy to shoot, even with high recoiling loads. So when it comes to this, and especially shooting some buckshot, even some regular high brass target loads, you're gonna know that you're shooting a shotgun, so that is something to consider. Now, a pro with this particular semi-automatic, it will shoot anything I've put through it so far. It will shoot low brass, high brass, pretty much everything in between. I've never had a malfunction of any type with this shotgun being a semi-automatic, and surprisingly, my 1187 is the exact same way. Never experienced an issue with that particular shotgun. So if you choose the right semi-auto, you should be just fine on reliability, and dare I say, it might be comparable to a pump action. Here's where we get to a little bit more of the controversial and surprising things that I saw when comparing these two directly. So going into this range day, I immediately assumed that the semi-automatic was going to beat out the pump action in speed. And although this, especially in this case, because the M1 Super 90 has one of the fastest actions in the world, Benelli really smokes it in that department, I started to realize that I was definitely a little faster with the pump action. Now, I think a lot of this comes down to training. I have a lot more time throughout my life on a pump action shotgun than I do a semi-automatic. But I think it's interesting how frequently I find myself kind of outrunning the trigger on a semi-automatic shotgun. And that never happens, of course, on a pump action. And I think, you know, although these actions are incredibly fast, you still have a very large mass traveling rear and forward, back and forth. And no matter what you do, it's going to be a slightly more sluggish system than, say, a semi-automatic rifle. So with the pump action, it's a lot more controllable. I can feel that action coming back and forward because I am the one working it. And I think, again, if you got a really slick 870 like this that is very, very quick, you might find that it is slightly faster on the pump action. The other thing that I noticed when it comes to speed is the repeatability and how quick those sights come back to target. On the semi-automatic, especially a very light shotgun like this, you will notice that it kind of wants to start riding up very, very quickly, almost in an AK-like recoil pattern. Whereas on a pump action, for whatever reason, because of the way that these guns are designed, in the way that you're using that kind of push-pull method, I have a very repeatable point of aim, and I find my bead getting back down to the target very, very quickly. Much faster than a semi-automatic, which again, the faster I go, the more it rides, and I don't know exactly why. Maybe it's because my hand is a little further to the rear, whereas on the pump, as you can see there, it's a little further forward. I got a little bit more control, but I thought it was really interesting just how much quicker and more accurate I was with the pump action than I was with the semi when I was comparing them side by side at the range. I think between the two, as I start comparing them more and more, I actually gravitate to the pump action as being my preferred choice. And I don't know if it's just time on these two, but there is something about a pump action that I just gravitate towards more, that I like more. Let's not forget the price of a pump action shotgun. I can pick up a good, reliable pump action shotgun for sub $300. Sub $300, that's very tough to beat. Whereas on the other hand, a good, combat-ready, reliable semi-automatic shotgun, there is no way you're touching it for that price. This Benelli M1 was $1,000, And if you're looking at a Beretta 1301, that's easily $1,000. Probably where I would start if you're looking for a good, reliable semi-automatic shotgun would be the Mossberg 930 series. And those shotguns are great, but you're not really touching them for below 500. So that's just something to be aware of. I mean, even this Remington 870 brand new, I think is around 400 bucks. And it's reliable. It is a lot of the times more reliable than a lot of semis out there, and you can shoot a wide variety of loads. So that's just kind of something to be aware of. A lot of people recommend a semi-automatic shotgun for a beginner, and this is something that I actually kind of agree with. I think overall, other than limp wristing, I'll say, or limp shouldering when it comes to a shotgun, you gotta be real tight on these semis in your shoulder to get this thing to cycle. If you're holding it loosely, it's not gonna cycle all the way back, especially in a lot of these inertia-driven systems. Now, when it comes to a shotgun that's semi-automatic, there's a lot less going on, and if you've shot rifles before, you might have a little bit better of an understanding on how to shoot a semi-shotgun if you've never shot anything, versus a pump action. On the contrary to what a lot of beginners think, this is a very difficult gun to learn how to shoot and learn how to shoot it well. So in that aspect, if you are a beginner, I would agree that probably a good semi-automatic would be maybe a little easier to learn on, and you're probably not at the point where you're outrunning the trigger or anything like that. So that's also something to consider as well. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Which one is better for you? Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, head up to the description, check out the ways to support the channel. As always, stay tuned for more great videos coming soon.